Welcome back, Ronin Renegades. I am Lupine Fiasco, this is Daily FaB Gameplay, and today's game will be played against Riptide. For anyone who is new to the channel, welcome to the Resistance. What we do here is review replays of games that I have played on the Talishar client days or weeks after the fact, when enough time has passed that I lose my bias and can more objectively judge the quality of my play. I will walk through turn cycles as if I were taking them now while explaining my thought process for the lines that I take, and will compare that to what I did at the time of the recording. We either learn from my mistakes or reinforce good play patterns. The goal of all this is to tighten and improve our gameplay in the future, take down paper events like Pro Quests and Road to Nationals, and walk away with that shiny, shiny cardboard. Without further ado, let's jump into our sideboard and our game plan. Today's game features my Searing Emberblade list. If you would like to check this list out on FaB or try it for yourself on Talishar, the deck link is available in the video description below. While you're down there, if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to my channel. It is the best free way to support me, and make sure you see daily FaB gameplay in your video feed 5 days a week. We have won the die roll, and we are going to choose to go second. This will let us block Riptide's first attack with cards from hand, then redraw at the end of Riptide's turn so that we can present the first real attack that either takes life points or cards that do not replenish at the end of our turn. I'll say straight up, I do not play this game well. I'm going to blame the cold that I had last week and the haze that surrounded my brain as I made decisions like, let's not pick up a Phoenix Flame this turn, or who needs to play a Phoenix Flame before Salt the Wound? That said, I do think there are a few important lessons to learn from this game, and so I am excited to share it with you. As we look at our equipment setup here, we are fine with all of it. Mask Momentum goes down quite a bit in value when we get to go second, as we want to race to a big Mask of the Pouncing Lynx turn. Additionally, Riptide understandably plays quite a few defense reactions, more than we would expect out of a Lexi or an Azalea, so we are a lot less confident that we would ever trigger Mask of Momentum, whereas Mask of the Pouncing Lynx only needs us to hit once in a turn. We're going to keep our Flamescale Furnace as we want to block arrow breakpoints. We also want 2 more life in what is closer to an aggro matchup than a control matchup. And finally, Rangers do not deal arcane damage, so we don't need our Spell Void or our Arcane Barrier. We are going to make a couple of changes here, one just being that we board out our Flamecall Awakening, the other being our second Phoenix Flame. We will also be cutting Stab Wounds for Warmonger's Diplomacy. Command and Conquer is always a solid card against Ranger, as attacking their arsenal can diminish the power of their next turn. They are usually going to look to throw an arrow in there. Against Riptide specifically, he may be more inclined to arsenal defense reactions, both because he has more of them and also because the Crucible of War defense reactions need to be played from arsenal. So there is a higher chance of getting value from CNC in this matchup compared to other Ranger matchups. Warmonger's Diplomacy is here because, much like Azalea, Riptide's biggest turns will come off the back of a few Laces, maybe a Seek and Destroy or a Premeditate, then an Arrow or a Death Touch played from arsenal. If we play the Warmonger's Diplomacy, especially at the end of a big turn where Riptide took a bunch of damage in anticipation of dealing it back, we may severely diminish his ability to deal big damage because he cannot buff an arrow and attack with that arrow in the same turn. Overall, our game plan in Riptide doesn't change much from the other Rangers. We are still looking to set up big Art of War and Spreading Flames turns to blow him out on his off turns. It is worth noting that Riptide does not have access to Red in the Ledger or Arctic Incarceration, so we are more likely to find these big go-off turns against Riptide than we would against Azalea or Lexi. What Riptide does bring to the table are powerful 2-card hands and traps. Unlike the other Rangers, Riptide can play a 2-card hand very well because of his hero power. If he plays a Lace with Frailty, that lets him reload his arrow from hand. If it is a 0-cost arrow, like Searing Shot or Endless Arrow, he can then fire it off. That is at least a 2-card 7, netting more value based on any on-hit effects, or if he has a Tunic available, playing something like Premeditate, then loading a Death Touch and attacking with it from Arsenal can net even more value. Traps are something we need to consider as well. Much like Brute, we don't want to fall too low on life, or else we risk just dying on our turn. If we go too low on life and throw something like a Ronin Renegade, Riptide can then react with Frailty traps, with Tar Pit traps, with Collapsing traps, and kill us that way. Most of Riptide's traps will trigger against us. Frailty trap, Tar Pit trap, both trigger off of Go Again, of which is almost every card in our deck. Inertia trap can trigger off of our Phoenix Flame or our Tiger Stripe Shuko or our Art of War, and all of the Crucible of War traps will trigger just by being played. So we do want to be aware of staying above a certain life threshold, probably something like 3 or 4, and all that means is we're going to block with armor a little more aggressively than we would against the other Rangers. We're going to give it up a little earlier. Think of it like playing against Runeblade, where you're going to block with armor a little earlier so that you don't just die to arcane damage. That is the game plan. That is our sideboarding. Let's jump into the game itself and see how this all comes together. This is a pretty good hand to start with. If we look over at Riptide's side of the board, we see a couple of interesting things. One being the card count in Riptide's deck. Riptide here presented a 66 card deck. He also is running the Quiver of Abyssal Depth. This is the Remembrance Quiver, which will let him put arrows from his graveyard back into his deck. So an interesting build to bring against FaB, and I don't know Riptide well enough to know if that is normal for the hero. I've heard rumors of an aggro Riptide that I can't imagine is playing more than 60 cards in the Ninja matchup. But I don't have enough experience with Riptide to know what this means, and as we all get more experience playing against him, now that Bullseye Bracers is back in the meta, this might just be something to reflect on and say, oh, here's how we should have played differently against that Riptide. Speaking of Bullseye Bracers, this Riptide is not using it, choosing to use Hornet Sting instead. So clearly slanted more towards a fatigue build, but again, I am new enough into this matchup, especially since the Bullseye Bracers suspension a few months ago. I can't tell you what this means. We do see a Trench of Sunken Treasure on Riptide's side of the board. Our Warmonger's Diplomacies and Command and Conquers go down in value while this is on the table. Our CNCs especially go down in value with Crown of Providence on Riptide's side of the board as well. So these are just things to keep in mind as we play through our turn cycles. As far as dealing with this Command and Conquer, we can block it easily with our 3 attack actions in hand and keep our Art of War for a future turn. Drawing into our hand here, we see that it is garbage. We basically need to play Art of War to do anything with this hand. If we wanted to use our Snapdragon Scalers on turn 2, we could play a Lava Burst, then snap it, Fluster Fist for Emberblade, then play Phoenix Flame and a second Lava Burst, but that's not good. So we're going to play our Art of War here and just see what this hand looks like when we're done. There are a number of draws in our deck that fix this hand. This isn't necessarily one of them. Everything I just said about Command and Conquer is extremely relevant here. Trench of Sunken Treasure will save the card from Riptide's arsenal, if not replace it. Crown of Providence will save and replace the card in Riptide's arsenal. So the correct play here is to play the second Art of War, banishing Command and Conquer, and just hoping that we draw into something relevant. You're going to see me attack with the Command and Conquer. I do remember that I just forgot that Riptide has Crown of Providence, so this is absolutely the wrong thing to do. We are going to arsenal this Art of War. We are going to keep our Lava Burst rather than pitch it to Flamescale Furnace because we can kind of try to set up a double finisher turn here. We draw into a blue, so this Art of War is pretty good. Hopefully, Riptide doesn't do too much on his turn to take us off of this line. Playing the 4 damage Ravenous Rabble and leading into Promise of Plenty. Maybe we should block this. We know that if this hits, Riptide does get a Sigil of Solace off the top of his deck. It isn't the best card that he could find, but it's a pretty good one. It does gain him 3 life. It's something he can play for free without taking the action point or interfering with the rest of his turn. But based on what we have in hand and our Art of War in arsenal, I am inclined to take this damage. It is unfortunate that this is a 6-point life swing, but we're trying to set up for this Art of War. And if we don't play the Art of War this turn, if we did block with our Lava Vein Loyalty or our Soulbeat Strike, the power of our turn goes way down and isn't even a good turn generally. So we're taking 9 from this Death Touch. We are getting a Frailty token, which is fine. This only affects our Searing Emberblade, so Bloodrot Pox here would have been 2 points of value for Riptide. Frailty is only 1. We are going to play our Art of War and banish our Lava Vein Loyalty. We're going to keep our Lava Burst because we have our Snapdragon Scalers, so if we draw into another finisher, we can still play it. And if we don't draw into another finisher, we have the option to double finisher with Snapdragon Scalers and Mask of the Pouncing Lynx. I choose to banish the Lava Burst here, which is just wrong. And let's even advance the replay a bit. Imagine one of these 2 Lava Vein Loyalties was a Lava Burst. Now this is a 22 damage turn, even without using Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, rather than a 19 damage turn, where we need to break Mask of the Pouncing Lynx to get value from our Tiger Stripe Shuko. Considering that we don't have a Lava Burst available, we aren't getting our Shuko trigger. So what we should do to start this turn is play our Phoenix Flame, which gets the Art of War and the Rise from the Ashes buffs, bringing it to 4 power. After the Phoenix Flame link resolves, we close the chain, Phoenix Flame goes back to our discard, then we play Ronin Renegade, Lava Vein Loyalty, Emberblade, and can pick up and play our Phoenix Flame again. It gets its own Shuko trigger, so it comes in for 3. And we now have the option of breaking Mask of the Pouncing Lynx for Lava Burst or Salt the Wound, depending on how Riptide does or doesn't block. This is a bit of a trickier play. I don't do this play and I lose my Shuko value this turn. Maybe this is a bit cold related, that I was still in a bit of a haze, but this is a slightly more complicated line. The big problem with not playing the Phoenix Flame first to then get it back is that I am now priced into breaking Mask of the Pouncing Lynx to get Shuko value. And based on this Tar Pit trap that says our attack actions need to hit, and 2 of them need to hit. The first needs to hit to clear the Tar Pit trap effect. The second needs to hit to trigger Mask of the Pouncing Lynx. we just put ourselves into a position where we're losing value, and that is exactly what is going to happen. This Lava Vein Loyalty is going to get blocked by a Boulder Trap. We don't have a floating resource available to pay for the Boulder Trap effect, so it cleanly blocks the Lava Vein Loyalty, but even if the Lava Vein Loyalty had hit, we would have only cleared the Tar Pit Trap effect. So we either needed to break Mask of the Pouncing Lynx on the first hit, or we needed to structure that turn differently to get our Shuko value. So that is absolutely a misplay on my part. This turn here looks fairly reasonable. We can play Ravenous Rabble, Blaze Headlong, Searing Emberblade, Phoenix Flame, get our Shuko value that way. Riptide is still at a high enough life total and with cards in hand that I'm not necessarily looking to break Mask of the Pouncing Lynx right now. There is a line where we arsenal our second Phoenix Flame, but I really want to get Shuko value here. I am interested in just playing the highest damage turn cycles, and putting a Phoenix Flame in Arsenal is not really all that necessary, especially when we know there is a Branded Cinderclaw on top of our deck that will turn on all of our Draconic Matters and Red Matters cards. Riptide here seems pretty committed to taking damage, which is interesting. I would have expected a little more blocking from him. That doesn't really mean that I am interested in breaking Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, but there is value to doing it. I think doing it here could be correct. We pick up our Salt the Wound. We play our Phoenix Flame for 2, which gets a block from Riptide, and our Salt comes in for 6. There is an argument to be made for attacking with Salt for 7, then arsenaling our Phoenix Flame, but I think the upside of getting a card from Riptide on blocks is just too good to pass up, so I agree with this line. The Inertia Trap triggers. We take a point of damage, but of course the Inertia token itself doesn't matter. Riptide gains 3 life, plays a Codex, and we now have a choice to make. The card that Riptide puts into his arsenal is Promise of Plenty, so we know that we will be taking at least 3 points of damage this turn, and whatever comes off the top of Riptide's deck. That isn't something I think we can really worry about, nor do we really want to. So we're just going to take the highest damage line here. Both of our Phoenix Flames are in discard, and we have no way of putting one back into our deck easily to get value out of Flamecall Awakening, so we are happy to discard it to the Codex effect. What we should grab here is Blaze Headlong. On our turn, we E-Strike for 5, drawing a card and bottoming our Mounting Anger. That turns on both of our Blaze Headlongs, which on their own equal 7 points of damage. If we draw a 0-cost Draconic attack with Go Again, we can play that. That lets us pick up and play our Phoenix Flame and gives us a little bit more value this turn. But at the very least, Blaze Headlong from Arsenal is just 3 points of damage, which is the most we can realistically get from this Codex. I take Salt the Wound instead, which is just wrong. I can see the upside, but I think that is really Magical Christmas Land. We're getting maybe 1 extra point of damage in the best case scenario, rather than the guaranteed value from Blaze Headlong and Arsenal that only gets better if we draw well from this E-Strike. This doesn't change our turn. We are still going to E-Strike, draw a card. We draw into a Lava Burst, so you can already see how this Salt the Wound is terrible value from Arsenal. We need to use our Snapdragon Scalers on this E-Strike to continue our turn. If this was a Blaze Headlong in Arsenal, we could Blaze Headlong for 4, Blaze Headlong for 3, Lava Burst for 5, then pick up and Arsenal a Phoenix Flame. Instead, the most we can do here is E-Strike for 5, Blaze Headlong for 4, Salt the Wound for 3, and Arsenal a Lava Burst. The Lava Burst in Arsenal isn't bad, but we could be doing so much more with this turn. We do use our Snapdragons, which unfortunately triggers this collapsing trap. So we take a point of damage, we lose our Blaze Headlong and our Lava Burst, and we draw into a blue. And you see how this still bites us in the ass. If this was a Blaze Headlong in Arsenal, we could play the Blaze Headlong, then pitch our blue for Emberblade, then pick up and play our Phoenix Flame for a total of 6 points of damage. Instead, the most we can do is pitch Soulbeat Strike for Emberblade for 2, then play Salt the Wound for 2. We get 4 points of damage instead of 6. So we are going to just save this Salt the Wound, but even now that isn't great because we have a finisher in Arsenal with no Snapdragon Scalers. So if we draw into another finisher, there just isn't much we can do with it. Riptide trenches away the card in Arsenal, which gives him essentially a free Death Dealer load. Seek and Destroy plus Remorseless is 8 points of damage, which I believe we should just take. It's going to put us low on life. This Remorseless puts us to 9. We are intending to play 5 attack actions on our turn, which will put us to 4. But I want to save our Furnace for stopping on hits. 2 points of block on Furnace is more relevant than 1 point of block. And there isn't too much difference between going to 6 versus going to 4 against Riptide. We're starting to get into that danger zone where we might just be dead to traps. But we've seen a fair number of traps out of Riptide already, and at a certain point we need to play to win, not play to not lose. So we take the 8 points of Remorseless damage. Riptide arsenals and passes the turn, and we are just going to play out this hand. We don't want to lead with our Mounting Anchor, we want to lead with our other starters to try to bait blocks. Our Mounting Anchor can be used on our Phoenix Flame that we pick up in response to the trigger, so we aren't losing any value by delaying our Mounting Anchor. Frailty Trap from Arsenal is unfortunate. It is an extra point of damage, and it is 2 points of value from our Emberblade and our Salt the Wound, so that is pretty bad luck for us. Riptide sinks the Mounting Anger, which is too bad. Here, we should absolutely play this Phoenix Flame after the Emberblade. But you're going to see me not do that, and this is just a mistake. I play the Salt the Wound without playing the Phoenix Flame, which is wrong for a couple of reasons. The first being, Seek and Destroy is active. We don't get an arsenal. So this Phoenix Flame is just going right back to discard. 2 is, while I might be thinking that I don't want to attack with this Phoenix Flame because I don't want to take remorseless damage, we're missing a potential 2 points of damage from the Phoenix Flame hitting and buffing Salt the Wound, and the Shuko trigger that comes from Phoenix Flame into Salt the Wound. So while I may think I don't want to take damage, I am happy as an aggro deck to take 1 point of damage if it means dealing 2 points of damage. So we should absolutely have played this Phoenix Flame. Not playing it is just a mistake, and this is where it hits me in game that I just screwed up. The Searing Shot is easily covered by 2 pieces of armor, so we are happy that we didn't block the Remorseless with Furnace. For this hand, we can play Rise from the Ashes, pick up a Phoenix Flame, then attack with Phoenix Flame, Emberblade, activate FaB, Phoenix Flame, E-Strike for 7, which puts Riptide in a tough position. And here we go. Phoenix Flame for 3, which Riptide takes. Emberblade for 3, which Riptide takes. We don't pick up the Phoenix Flame, which is just a mistake. This one I can absolutely blame on being sick. I just forget. Maybe I'm confusing it with my Kodachi list where I only have one Phoenix Flame, but just wrong. Riptide here is managing a big turn with Lace, Premeditate, and Codex of Frailty. Codex finds Remorseless, and we are just going to pack it in. I made a lot of mistakes that game, and those mistakes all compounded. Riptide being at an effective 3 health at the end of that game is very beatable. We absolutely bled 3 points of value over the course of that game, and possibly even more. And if we get all of that value over the course of the game, Riptide can't set up an 11 damage Remorseless turn, has to play with less damage, which we can then block, and possibly pressure Riptide into a loss. But we did learn some things that game and saw how Riptide plays a bit differently than the other Rangers, and how we need to play a bit differently against Riptide compared to the other Rangers. I think this video was worth posting, mistakes and all, and hopefully you got something out of it as well. If you did learn something, if you did like the video, then do me a favor and head jab that like button for me. My comments are always open for any questions or feedback, and I will see you all back here tomorrow for more daily FaB gameplay. And until then, take care.